once, you won't be alive to eat it twice. Plants are in not by looking at the leaves, but by looking at the flowers and the seed pods. So what family do you think this vine is in? Legume. Typical legume type pod, similar to the kiwi vines. Yes, the flowers are less great than actual. In the springtime. Springtime is the time for the
beans are poisonous, you said?
Yes, look. Gorgeous color. Pass them around. And they split in half just like other members of the pea family.
Wisteria.
And if you have a magnifying lens, look at the coloration with a magnifying lens. These are beautiful and deadly. They remind me of my ex-girlfriend. By the way, the person who has the extra flyers, so it looks like they're two people on bicycles. Okay, this is an excellent dish to serve the boss when he or she comes over for dinner. And I actually did have a friend who ate some of these. In the 60s, her girlfriend's boyfriend decided, since she was a vegetarian, it would be funny to just give her something randomly from a vine and say, here, I eat this all the time, try it. The woman got so sick she could barely crawl to the toilet to vomit. The doctors said they'd never heard of anyone who eaten as many of these seeds as she had and lived. They were greatly disappointed, contradicting their medical advice. But she apparently threw everything up right away, didn't absorb much of the poison, and recovered. The flowers that you see up there in the spring are edible and quite delicious. You put them in salads, you can make wine with them, you put them in oatmeal after the oatmeal is finished cooking, and you put them in pancake batter. And in terms of rat poison, never ever uncover a rat hole, stick your hand in, pull it, and look up on top.
Are they medicinal, Steve?
No, no.
They're not.
It tastes like nothing.
It tastes like nothing. So you've
Exactly
all tasted
Well,
it.
they taste like nothing. They're not.
But I made a decent tea out of the leaves, Steve.
But
You've made tea with the leaves?
Yeah, and it was decent.
it's colorful.
All right, Chris says he's made decent tea with the leaves. I'd rather use the common strawberry for tea. That's the one that people have traditionally experimented with over thousands of years. So let's keep going. We want to focus mainly on some of the major edible and medicinal plants. Start with the balance.
Wood strawberry.
Alcohol has a low boiling point.
Oh,
and then
sorry.
You take that tincture for worms and parasites. You can also put this on fungal infections, ringworm, and infections on the nail. The husk has been used for centuries for these kinds of things. Anyone want a husk? Yeah.
You break out some foliage.
Any comments on the flavor of the walnut? I think they're quite delicious.
Here's
Oh, here's another one if someone wants another walnut.
foliage.
We're waiting for the last person to catch up. No, we're gonna wait. This is the common spice bush. It's a bush, it's not a tree. Unlike a tree or an elephant, it doesn't have a trunk. It has alternating leaves. They're simple leaves. They're not divided into segments. And the leaves themselves are basically tear-shaped. There are no teeth on the edge of the leaf. The margin of the leaf is smooth. It's called the common spice bush, Lindera benzoin, and it has red berries. And each berry has a black seed inside. Here's what you do with this. You pull off leaves and berries. Take a handful like this, pour boiling water, ow, not while it's in your hand. Pour boiling water over it and let it sit covered about 20 minutes. You'll have a very, very delicious herb tea. If you use several handfuls of leaves and berries, you'll make a very, very strong tea. And that will make you perspire and activate your immune system. Very good if you're fighting an infection. You also chop up the berries finely and put maybe 2 or 3 in a serving of 6 for applesauce or cookies or cakes. They taste a little bit like allspice. They are an incredible seasoning. I actually can't cook without these anymore. I'm totally dependent on these berries. To store the berries, you have to freeze them. They contain oils, and the oils prevent you from drying them successfully. When you dry something, you remove the water from it. The bacteria that cause spoilage need the water to multiply, and therefore when you dry something, it can no longer spoil due to bacteria. But oils, whether dried or not, will react with oxygen and become rancid. So drying is no good for oily things. For oily things like these nuts, you freeze them. And you can freeze these on a cookie sheet or on a plate, and once they're frozen, gather them together and put them in a freezer container. That way they won't stick to each other, and you can defrost 1 or 2 at a time for any kind of baking. Like allspice, you can use these for both main course dishes and desserts. I make carob chip cookies with spice berries and black walnuts, which are wonderful. I'm working on a cookbook now, and that's certainly one of the recipes that's going to be in there. These are in season in the fall. You can't dry the leaves either because the flavor of the leaves, the oils that give the leaves the flavor are volatile, and they lose all of their flavor when you dry them. So you have to use these fresh. For that reason, even though this is one of the most valuable herbs, both as a beverage and medicinally, you don't find it in any herb books at all, because herb books are basically to promote products that you can buy, and if you can't buy it, if it's free, then there's no reason for including it in the herb book. This is a native species, common spice bush. The pioneers called it the fever bush because they used it for fever, and so did the Native Americans. So help yourselves, collect as much as you would like. All the leaves and all the berries are going to fall to the ground very soon anyway.
Do you break the branch off? Or
No, don't break.
Gilder rose or cramp bark. Inner bark is used for cramps. Berries are edible, part of the viburnum family, tastes awful. Looks a bit like the maple leaf viburnum, but the berries are significantly larger and bright and red in color.
Horizontal white streaks on it.
I didn't even know this.
Older black cherry bark.
Look at this. Didn't make me want to bird.
Younger black cherry bark. Japanese knotweed seed. It's now September, I don't know, 20th, something like that.
Most of the green leaves have vitamin A and calcium on it. The flowers, I prefer the leaves.
Wind pollinating plants which aren't trying to attract insects, have inconspicuous flowers. The smaller and the lighter the seed, the easier it is to propagate by wind, or to be carried by wind. And the husk just serves as a form of protection. In modern agriculture, the attempt is to get large seeds, which is not really an attractive feature for nature's schemes, but it is for, obviously, for grains and stuff like that.
When people store their grains and the feed for the cattle, you wait this week, and if someone is macrobiotic, they automatically
Red
go
bud?
on the ground and start digging as fast as they can. Macrobiotic people the roof, which is going to be very hard to dig up because it hasn't rained for weeks. I do have a shovel if anyone would like to try. You cook like a potato. You slice it quickly and steam it or put it in right. It is delicious. It's pasta fire. It's full of nutrients, and it goes very deep. I think this is probably Korean burdock here. That means it's 100 Korean on the other end, pulling in the other direction. So these are delicious if you're an iguana or a gyoza. As far as humans go, we had dug up burdock here once after it had rained and the leaves were wet. The ground was soft. The burdock came up very easily, but people handled the wet leaves. And then they picked wet berries, and every time they ate the berry, oh, this is horrible, this is bitter. Everything they picked had this horrible bitter flavor. What I figured out was the bitter flavor from the wet burdock leaves had gotten on people's fingers and ruined everything else. None of those people ever came back on another walk. Okay, who would like to try digging one up? Okay, go around.
Redbud pods and leaves.
And as soon as those flowers come
Brown pod, let me get that
brown
one.
pod is right here.
Here is a tree that has multiply compound leaves.
Wow.
The compound leaves themselves have divided further. Actually, here's a baby tree. Let's look at this one. Look, here's the brown branch of the tree, the trunk. And look, this is one leaf divided into segments, and then each segment is further subdivided. So this is a multiply compound leaf. It read the chapter in my book on compound leaves and really took it to heart. This is called the Kentucky coffee tree. Wow. It has these pods, and inside the pod are black seeds. You take and the seeds are also all over the ground. You take the seeds, wash them off, any of the green pulp inside the pod you don't want. That's actually poisonous, but it washes off. Then you roast the seed for 3 hours at 300 degrees. Your whole apartment will smell like coffee. You get a caffeine-free coffee, which you then grind about half a cup at a time on low speed in your blender, not in a spice grinder. They're too heavy for that. In the blender to about the consistency of coffee. Put this in your coffee maker. You have an incredible caffeine-free coffee that tastes so much like coffee that I can't stand it because I don't like coffee. Kentucky coffee tree. Here, hold this next to your ear, and you can tell how much it's like coffee.
Kentucky coffee tree bark.
Okay, look on the ground. See, the seeds should be all over. You can gather these seeds all.
Young Kentucky coffee tree.
It's like a coffee source. It looks like fake coffee, but it's like twice as expensive as coffee. So like this will be good to add to it.
it is. Hey, look.
This is crabapple. Two.
Here we have the black walnut, and this is the black walnut tree. If you look up in the tree, you see the walnuts in the tree, but they also fall to the ground. They are covered with a green husk. And what you want to do is collect the walnuts.
Which one? The one that looks like a loaf?
Yes, yes.
They're in
Look at all the nuts. Someone should climb up and get the rest of the nuts down there. Yeah, they're in bunches, but some of them are on the ground. This is a Native American tree. Oh, that's what I'm going to show you.
They're very hard to break.
Now I need a fair. Oh, there. And then if it's ripe, you crack it open with a rock. And here is the black walnut. Who would like to try a piece? Just pull out a piece of the white nut meat. Tell us what it tastes like. It's not the same species as the commercial walnut. What do you think of the flavor? Here, take it from this one. Do you have a knife?
Beech nut.
What are they? We have so much on our...
Okay, as soon as everyone's here, we'll go over it. Okay, come on everyone. We have another plant to look at.
They took over our whole pasture.
The next plant we're going to look at is called the common mallow, Malva neglecta. It has a pleated leaf. It has a flower that looks sort of like a hibiscus flower.
Hibiscus?
Yes, it is related to the hibiscus. Here's the flower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals. And it's a very beautiful flower. You should look at this with a magnifying lens. We only have one lens with us, but we could share it. And it has a fruit called a cheese. Let's see if I can get a big cheese here. Here, this is called the cheese. Yeah, I'm a vegan, and this is the only cheese I eat. And the leaves, the flowers, and the cheeses.
Yeah? Okay. Of the edible viburnums, there's nannyberry and wild raisin. You check the petiole or leaf stalk. One is flat, one is rounded to tell the difference between the two. There's seabald viburnum, and then in New England there's hobblebush. Those are the edible viburnums that Steve recognizes. There is the mint on the, it smells like the dust behind a stereo. He says it's called dead nettle, square stem. It is a mint. There is the plant beggar's tick, which is very clear here. Yellow flowers, beggar's tick, I don't know, we'll have to look it up. And dead nettle, beggar's tick, viburnums. Yeah. Those whitish berries which burst are dogwood. These ones that squirt, they are not edible. And those bluish, cultivated, those bluish, true bluish looking berries are also dogwoods which are not edible. Maybe even poisonous. And that's it for now. We test apples by cutting it along the equator, and you'll see seeds in sets of 5. Common plantain.
Okay, we have some people from Japan here. How many Japanese people at Oklahoma? Okay, this is it.
Longleaf plantain.
Burdock in English. It has a very deep root. The root is quite deep, and there's usually a hungry Japanese person on the other end pulling in the other direction. Who wants to try some? It's delicious. You cook it like a potato. It's a detoxifier. It's very good for the liver.
Here's a longleaf plantain.
How do you like it? Yeah, but it is related to the artichoke. Here, use this. This is better.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, what we have here is a tooth fungus. This is a fungus parasitizing this turkey oak tree. And the fruiting body has little teeth on it. Unfortunately, I can already tell this is like cutting through leather. It is way too tough to eat. Hydnum is the scientific name. And it has spores on these tiny little teeth. There are no poisonous tooth fungi, and some of them are quite delicious, but you have to get them when they're still young and very tender. And let's turn this on the side. You can see the teeth hanging down as well. The tree obviously got water from underground, or maybe from the reservoir, and stored the water, which is why the mushroom came up even when it's not raining. Although I wouldn't be surprised this mushroom came up, it looks pretty old. Probably came up before the drought really set in. Here you can see the teeny little teeth.
Oh, yeah.
Nice smell, probably incredibly bitter. Actually, it's not bitter tasting yet. It's apparently not that old. If this weren't so tough, it would be a very good edible one. Yeah, it's like leather. Too bad we got it too late. Otherwise, I think this one is called the sweet tooth. Also, the bear tooth fungus.
How long it would take me to get that size?
This could have been here like 2-3 weeks. It's already decaying. Yeah, yeah. If there's any on the other side of the tree. suffering. You can see broken branches without leaves in various places when you look up in the tree. It's definitely being parasitized. Okay, let's move on. It's nice to find any mushroom in a drought. This is also one we have never gotten on video yet.
Turkey oak. Doorweed. But actually the leaves don't look too... The leaves are alternate on this, and at each axle, leaf axle, there is a flower coming up.
System in the world, because in pre-industrial England, for example, you go out of your house, you have trees growing in front of your house, there's a bear behind the tree, and the bear eats you before you can react, and it's very painful. It can ruin your whole day. So you cut down all the trees, make sure there's nothing there but grass. The bear has to come from the tree across your property, and you can get your crossbow and turn the tables on the bear and have it for dinner. So the richer people with the most servants would be able to have the biggest lawns. And that's how the lawn became a status symbol. And people have that stuck in their mind that that's the ecosystem that should be put everywhere. Central Park was invented by Olmsted and Vaux to be an alternative to the European formal gardens of the 19th century with curving paths and hills and wooded areas and fields. They didn't even have playgrounds when the park was designed. And they fought tooth and nail to keep all statues out of the park to make it a naturalistic park. But the Central Park Conservancy today knows much, much better. And they're trying to kill all the wild plants and turn them into lawns. And they're actually right. When was the last time anyone in Central Park was eaten by a bear? Also, lawns actually made more sense in pre-industrial Europe. In England, for example, you never have to water the lawn because it always rains. And you have sheep, so you never have to mow the lawn. The lawnmowers, lawnmowers and leaf blowers that people use for their lawns account for 10% of all of the air pollution of America, which is more air pollution than some third world countries will produce in 10 years. But no one gets eaten by bears, so that must be the way to manage an ecosystem. The other thing that's really important to do, when the leaves fall from the trees in the fall and land on the ground, they form a shelter so that the raindrops will come down really fast, hit the leaves, and just trickle into the soil. And the leaves will decompose and become part of the soil and renew the soil. Since the trees are taking nutrients from the soil and bringing them up into the canopy, they will then go back into the earth. Totally wrong. What you need to do is pay people with tax money to come in, put the leaves in bags, and dump them into the ocean where they belong. Maybe next year they'll take fish and dump them into the park where they belong from the ocean. But that's the way the park gets managed. Yes.
I do too.
This is more agreeable than mushrooms. It looks different.
But you can't eat too much because it'll really get your stomach if you take too much.
Well, like when you
Is
cook
this
it with
older
beans.
or younger than? Because this is the other episode.
Yeah, that's a young one, and these are really old ones right here.
When you cook the epazote with beans, how much epazote do you put in there?
What I've used, probably you could eat it, but
You can squish the berry and see the little seeds inside. And although it's poisonous, a friend of mine who does macrobiotic foraging in Maryland by the name of Deborah Hogue had Thai friends who kept it. And finally, she managed to, if someone can give the lady there one of my flyers, finally she managed, the friends managed to get her to have dinner with them and eat this plant. And except for several days of delirium and unconsciousness, it had no harmful effect on her at all. It turns out that the Thai people eat these leaves in communal stews. The kids pick out the leaves and discard them because they're bitter. It's an acquired taste, apparently. But they get enough of the poison from the rest of the stew that they become tolerant of the poison, and then they can
Black Eyed Susan. Two, one.
Here's an ornamental shrub with leaves and pairs and clusters of umbrella-like fruit. It's called the Siebald viburnum, S-I-E-B-A-L-D. And if the berries are still firm and not rotten, you can eat the black berries. They are sweet. They're pretty small and they have a seed inside, but they have a nice flavor. So help yourselves. Quite good taste. Here, up here. This looks like a nice bunch.
Four, five, 6, 7, 8.
It's okay though.
2, 3,
You is better
4, 5, 7, 8.
Unfortunately, they're small. This is something people should have
I used to eat the mulberries.
down. Here we go. This is the fruit. American persimmon. These have to be completely ripe and soft to the point where they look rotten before you can eat them. Otherwise they are astringent and your mouth feels like it's going to pucker 380 degrees. Very, very delicious fruit once it's ripe.
What color is it?
It's orange. It's related to the commercial persimmon, but much smaller and much, much tastier. Muttontown Preserve on Long Island and Central Park are the two parks where we get, and also Casino Park in Flushing. There's a big persimmon tree there. It's in the mahogany family. If you look at the bark, it's very, very dark and it has little rectangles like mosaics on it. You especially see that on the older, larger persimmon trees. It's very hard wood also.
When is the persimmon flying?
Very late fall, early winter. The one in Casino Park, once I was collecting around New Year's. This is the look at the bark. Very dark and little rectangles. Okay, it's 4:35. It'll take us about 10 minutes.
Okay, just a minute. I get it. No, sit down. Hey. Oh, let's see what we have. What's in this?
It's eggplant
With?
and a vegetable.
And what's in here?
Oh, what's the vegetable you're buying? The green
It's Chenopodium goosefoot.
chicken mushroom.
Chicken mushroom and sprouts. And some Kusa dogwood.
Why? No. It's for the forehead. No.
Stop hiding. Don't be shy.
I'm not shy. I just don't want you to eat it.
Berries than others. So look around and see if you can find somewhere that's really packed with these berries.
Steve, I think I found an alcohol inky.
What did you find?
I think it's an alcohol inky.
Okay, let's look around here for the Martian berry.
Yeah, he said just stuff to nibble on.
9, 8.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I knew there was somewhere here where there was a large patch.
So, will you just pick this one, talk about it, then
Yes.
walk over and pick that one, all in the same sequence?
Okay, I'd like to show you this mushroom. Let's give Chris a minute to get it on videotape. Tell me when you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, this is the shaggy mane mushroom, one of the easiest mushrooms to recognize. And it actually has it's white, has a very narrow cap, and it's actually shaggy. It's in a group of mushrooms called the inky caps, and as the mushroom matures from the bottom up, it turns into ink and disintegrates, releasing all its spores. Let's open this up, and you can see inside that the gills from the bottom up are already starting to turn black. When this is fresher, you can use the mushroom. It's very easy to recognize, nothing poisonous that looks like it. It's excellent in soups and in sauces. It has too much of a moisture content. It's too wet to saute it. If you cook something in oil that has a lot of water in it, instead of reaching a temperature of 375 degrees, which is what you want to get when you're cooking in oil, like sauteing, it goes up to 212, the water starts to boil, and if you turn the heat up higher, the water just boils faster. And as a result, it doesn't cook properly, it absorbs the oil, it gets greasy and oily and never gets the crispness that you want. So that's why this is no good to cook in oil. Now, Chris apparently found a relative of the mushroom over by the tree. This is another member of the Inkycap family called the alcohol inky, Caprinus atramentarius. And this is also edible when it's younger.
What is that called?
This is called the alcohol inky, Caprinus atramentarius. The shaggy mane is Caprinus comatus. And look at this. This has turned inky even more. Look, here's the ink on my finger. Now, the alcohol inky mushroom is notorious for the reactions that you can get to this if you drink alcohol and eat the mushroom. It contains coprine, which is a substance that destroys the enzyme that your liver uses to detoxify alcohol. Alcohol is a poison, but the liver detoxifies the alcohol. If you eat this mushroom and it has enough of the coprine in it to destroy the liver enzyme, you get alcohol poisoning, where your face turns red, your heart starts to beat rapidly, and you're absolutely sure that your hours on the earth are numbered. And then all the symptoms disappear. So it's not a good one to drink. Now, I had a lady friend who had dinner with me once, and we ate the shaggy mane mushroom. We did not drink any alcohol, and about 10 minutes after dinner, her face turned red, her heart started to beat rapidly, and she started saying, "Steve, you've done it this time. I'm going to die, and it's your fault." And then the symptoms went away, except for her anger, which lasted quite a long time, although I no longer know the lady, so it may still be lasting to this point. It's quite mysterious. Maybe she manufactured alcohol in her bloodstream. Totally inexpensive. Excuse me? This isn't an allergic. It's the same reaction you get if you give alcoholics antabuse.
Okay.
You're getting acute alcohol poisoning, which is temporary when the alcohol is gone from the body. It's not a classic allergy. She had every single symptom that you get if you ate this mushroom with the alcohol. The other thing is, my friend Gary Linkoff, who wrote the Audubon Society Mushroom Guide to North America, he and his friends found pounds of these mushrooms. They ate them all, then they went to a bar and got plastered. And except for a hangover the next morning, nothing happened because the mushrooms they found did not have enough of the coprine in it to cause the classical reaction that they were trying to elicit. So there are always unknowns with the mushrooms. Okay, if anyone would like these to study, they're both too old and inky to eat.
Do the shaggy manes, do they get large?
Yeah, they can get about this large.
Okay, because this looks like what I had in my yard.
It's very possible. If you get a mushroom book, this is one of the easiest ones to identify. No poisonous lookalikes. Do not drink alcohol when you eat that mushroom. Any mushrooms wild mushrooms that you shouldn't be drinking because it increases the possibility of idiosyncratic allergic reactions. Okay, let's look for some other things.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Let's take a look at coltsfoot. This is a leaf that's shaped like a colt's hoof. Everyone can take one. If you look at the back of the leaf, it's very white and fuzzy, and if you want to use my magnifying lens, let's see who can figure out why it's fuzzy on the back. This is related to the dandelion. And in the springtime, there's a flower that looks like a dandelion flower, except the stem of the flower, instead of being smooth, is scaly. This is one of the best medicinal plants for coughs. You pour boiling water over a handful of leaves and let it sit for about 20 minutes away from the heat, covered. You have a tea. You then remove the leaves and drink the tea. It's an expectorant. It helps you bring up phlegm. In the In the 1700s, they would have an emblem of coltsfoot on the placard above the doorway of the pharmacies of Paris to show that the real stuff is being sold in this particular pharmacy. This has been used since ancient times for coughs. And the medieval botanists, because the flower comes up first and then it dies and then the leaf comes up, thought that there were two plants growing in the same place at different times of year, one with a flower and no leaf and another with a leaf and no flower. The Indians, who were a lot more observant and probably dug up the plant to see where it was coming from, called it son before father, since usually it's the leaf that's the father and comes up first, and then the flower, which is the son, comes up afterwards. Look at the underside of the leaf and see why it has that white color on it. What do you see?
Web.
A web. It's hairy. That might be to reflect light to keep it from drying out. It may also be to deter insects from eating the leaves. Hold the lens right up to your eye. Bring the leaf in closer. Keep going. There you go. It should be in focus now.
Wait, what's the active ingredient?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the name of it is. If it has been discovered, it would be in my book. So we can look at that later.
Did you see it?
What do you do? You boil the leaf? You boil the leaf? And
You steep the leaf. You don't boil it. You pour boiling water over the leaf and let it sit in the hot water for 20 minutes. Now, if you don't have a cough, there are two things you can do. One, come back to New York with me and ride the subway a lot and you'll catch a cough. Two, put the leaves in a paper bag in a warm, well-ventilated room and leave them for a few weeks. They will dry. Then you can pack the leaves into
Can you
a
tape
jar
that one? Or
and
I'm gonna tape
save
these.
them for when you get
Sure,
a cough.
thanks.
In addition, and I do need
It's all right,
everyone
I'll get back to you. That's fine.
please, I have more information
Well,
about
I don't know if that's the right leaf arrangement. It's all right.
Okay. In addition to the tea, inhale the smoke. If you have an acute cough, and I did this with someone who had bronchitis and couldn't sleep because she was coughing so much, this will dry out the cough. You want to smoke herbs as infrequently as possible because you're getting carbon monoxide as a byproduct of the burning, and you're also getting ashes into your lungs. So you only want to do this for emergence with coltsfoot, because the coltsfoot ashes would be a source of salt, and if they didn't live near the sea where sodium was in very short supply, they would need to get plants that had sodium in them for an essential nutrient. In our society, we usually have too much sodium. So anyway, I burned the dried leaves, put the ashes into a stew, and it turned out that the stew tasted like there were ashes in the stew. The books were completely wrong. I'm self-taught. I got all the books I could. Once in a while, I'd find someone leading a field walk, and I did a lot of experimentation in the kitchen once I knew for sure that I was eating an edible and not a poisonous plant. But the books are full of mistakes. I've tried to correct that in my book. What I've discovered was that this is a European species of coltsfoot. There is an American species of coltsfoot that grows in the Great Plains west of the Mississippi. Who knows what that habitat looked like in the days of the dinosaurs? Just east of the Rocky Mountains. It was an inland sea, so the salt would be in the sediments. And if the sediments from that age are close to the surface, which you do get due to erosion, and the American species of coltsfoot grows there, that would pick up the sodium that would be in very short supply in that part of the country. So I did manage to correct the misinformation. Obviously, someone had known about that practice of using the American Western coltsfoot, and the information sort of from one book to another got transferred to all species of coltsfoot, and that is not so. So this, go ahead.
Can you dry them?
Do you wash them first before drying them? I know with many herbs they tell you not to wash them because you're going to take the oils and things off.
It depends on how clean these look. These look completely clean here. I wouldn't bother washing them. If I did wash them, I'd run water over them very quickly and then tap them dry with a towel. Some plants have essential oils, especially things that are fragrant and flowers that are more delicate. This isn't particularly delicate. Once you do have this dried, you pack it into a tightly closed jar and it'll last for years and years. So it looks like there's quite a bit of culture on the... Same thing. No, it's the same thing. This is also... Okay, now this is also called Queen Anne's Lace. Queen Anne's Lace is a biennial. The first year it has leaves coming from the ground. This is called a basal rose depth. B-A-S-A-L. The first article I ever wrote in 82 that ever B-A-S-A-L. There was a recipe for spaghetti. This is a basal rosette. Early spring and in the fall, there is food stored underground, so if someone has a water hole, you want one of these off, you can spray it out the winter. The second, in the summer of the first year, the leaves get really big and the root gets too tough to eat. But the new...
Fried chicken mushroom.
Woods and you had him and me, I'd find you everything to eat and he'd build shelters and start fires. Okay, S-P-H-A-G-N-U-M, moss. This has physical properties that make it very useful for people. It has lots of air spaces in it and it's very, very absorbent. You pack this around a wound and it will prevent the wound from getting infected. I had a friend who used this for diapers for his baby, and the baby never had diaper rash once. It absorbs everything. It can be used for feminine napkins and really anything else where you need absorbent material. I believe in World War I the Germans used this as surgical dressing. Very, very useful wild plant. S-P-H-A-G-N-U-M. Sphagnum moss. Oh, great. No, that's why it's not in my book. It's not an edible plant. And I don't have plants that are only medicinal in the book or it would be this long. I have all the edible plants with their medicinal properties. Lots of nice partridge berries, but we do want to continue looking for other things, so let's keep going.
Especially in hiking and camping, they just stuff it inside of their, like, over things. Like, I guess rubber.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. So you wonder what's in there.
Well, they had to do something.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shoot.
Okay, here is some garlic mustard with really large leaves, and let's see what happens when we pull this up. There we go. Now this has enough of a horseradish flavor to put into a salad dressing or into a sauce or into really anything you want. Who wants this one?
We'll take it.
Okay, here you go. You can just try.
You're not recording, are you?
Yeah, I am.
Didn't get any of that yet.
No. Yeah. No, go ahead. It's all right.
Sound?
Yeah.
Oh,
You're saying there's a very strong what?
mint.
Oh.
The mints all have square stems. Turn the stem in your hand. You'll feel right here it has 4 sides. The leaves are always in 2s. Not every plant with square stems and opposite leaves is a mint, but if it has square stems and opposite leaves and smells minty, then it's definitely a mint and you can use it.
No.
Find something? Don't hog the hog peanut. Get a big clump of dirt. Do we have hog peanut on tape?
We don't have. We've had it without it being mature and ready. So let's get this.
Okay. Okay, now work through the dirt with your fingers coming from where the vine comes out and see if you can find the little peanuts. Should be right at the right plant. No, this is this plant. The vine was growing around the hog peanut, so you still have to find where the vine was coming from. So just dig around here and see if you can find little tubers. So let's find where one of these is coming from. Here. Oh, we tore it. Did we tear it? Let's find another one. Here we go. Look, right over here. So dig this way. It's great to have an assistant. There we are. Lift it up. Good, good. Let me lift it a little more. Okay, now start digging in here with your fingers. Trace where this comes from. Keep going. Oh, wait a minute, we got it, but I don't see any tubers. Oh, look at us. Here they are. They're still teeny here. These are supposed to be bigger.
Oh yeah, I see them too.
You see any big ones? Okay, wait, don't do anything yet. Here, come out here. I'm going to show you what
Okay, let me get a shot, all right?
Okay, here we have a bush. The leaves are alternate. That means each leaf is alone on the stem. And because these leaves are alone, they must feel very lonely. And if they're that lonely, they must be getting sad. And these leaves are so sad that they're shaped like teardrops. This is called the spice bush. You can make a delicious tea. Smell these leaves. Delicious tea out of the leaves. They only work fresh. And a common spice bush, Lindera benzoin. You can only use them fresh. They make a delicious tea. And watch out, there are other things growing, vines growing along with the leaves. See, these aren't tear-shaped. This is the leaf. It's tear-shaped, has no teeth on the edge, smooth edge.
Is that
and
what the berries are?
And it has berries that you use as a seasoning. Like allspice. They are incredibly delicious. You use one berry finely chopped up for a recipe to serve 6 of cookies, of cakes, of stuffings. They're similar to allspice.
Wild turkeys love those things.
Well, wild men do too. This is one of my favorite culinary seasonings. To help yourselves, to store the berries, you stick them in the freezer. Very fragrant.
Anything,
Let's see if we can find some more bushes.
Stuffing.
It's the hog peanut with the seed pods.
Okay, here we go. Ready? 5, 4, 3, 2.
Oh, and here are the little baby peanuts in the bottom. They're not big enough to eat yet, but they're there. However, let's open up the seed pod. And here's the seed inside. It looks a little hard. I'll try oh, I guess I won't try eating that one. Here's another one. Maybe too hard at this stage. Almost like eating a stone. This looks a little younger. It's in the family of umbelliferous plants, plants with flowers and seeds that look like little umbrellas.
Okay, let me just do a tilt down on it, then you can talk about it.
Okay, this is fool's parsley, one of the poisonous lookalikes of wild carrots. Has a flower like Queen Anne's lace or wild carrot. Has these 3 little bracts hanging like beards from the flowers. Has no hair on the stem. Carrots do have hair on the stem. Doesn't smell very good, and it is quite poisonous. We're looking at this specimen in October in Connecticut. And I need to find a fool to eat this, and then we'll see what the symptoms are. What? Most of you are already doing things to protect the non-renewable resources of the environment, the rare species, the habitats that are holding on to this. To encourage everyone to continue in that direction. I'm always available to do educational work for schools. I take kids and their friends on nature walks for their birthday parties, and then I play.
Can we start this out like we're going out on a hunt? I think that will, I mean, just, you know, sort of here we are at wherever, and it will just have more appeal for the transition in the video from scene to scene. Out with the wild man hunting.
I'm wondering if...
Let me see your face though with the shadow.
I want to see if there's any closer.
Jeez. Really bad. Okay, we're gonna have to shoot like this. You're really going to have to speak up when you do it because of the wind. So you want to start back here and walk up into it?
Okay.
Okay, you want to start back here? I'm just going to walk behind you, then you can turn around as you're walking and describe where we're going.
All right.
Okay. Go ahead.
We are in Rockaway. This is an area of Queens with lots of empty lots. We're a block away from the Atlantic. We're a block away from the Atlantic Ocean. The wind is blowing. The air is cold. It's late October. I love this kind of weather. And we have miles and miles of fields as far as the eye can see. It's too sandy for trees to grow. The soil is very poor. It's almost all sand, but there are lots of plants that specialize in very poor soil that are thriving because they're getting all the sun that trees would normally get. And right down here on the ground, we have several basal rosettes of common evening primrose. The leaves are coming out from the base of the plant. That's why it's called a basal rosette. There is a taproot underground which is edible and quite delicious, and I'm going to dig one of these up. Doesn't really take much digging. You just move the sand away and the root comes right up. I don't think I could have left the shovel at home. It is a white taproot. Tastes like radish. Incredible in soups and stews. Notice the leaf is toothed. It has reddish discoloration, and there's a white midrib on each leaf. That's how you recognize it. The root has some of this reddish discoloration, especially toward the top, and a wonderful radishy smell. It is a very delicious root vegetable. You can steam it, you can put it in soups, sauces, and stews. A little bit like okra, it will thicken the soup slightly. It makes the soup silky, mucilaginous, although that's not a very appetizing word. And this root is in season in the fall and in the early spring. In mid-spring and summer, the root gets tough, so you have to use it in the cold weather. It's around in the winter too, although once the leaf is obliterated by the cold, you don't know where to dig anymore. I collect this in New York City from March through April, and then again from October into December. One very warm winter, I was collecting it throughout the winter. Okay, let's take a look at the skeleton of the flower stalk. Actually, this is still a little bit alive. Notice, it has the same leaf with a white midrib in the middle. This is the second year common evening primrose. The plant is a biennial. It grows for 2 years. In the second year of its growth, I will play because it's its second birthday, and then I'll play because it dies after its second birthday. And it has pods which are full of seeds. Let's take a pod, pick it up, open it, and look inside. Lots of little black seeds. They plant fields of this Native American plant in England and have workers collecting millions of seeds, which are then pressed into common evening primrose oil, which then gets put into capsules and is sent to the United States, where it balances the prostaglandins when you take it. Prostaglandins are short-lived fatty hormones first isolated from the prostate gland, and this is good for female menstrual problems and for circulation. Quite expensive if you buy it in the store.
You know what?
Yeah?
Okay.
by the seashore. These are actually empty lots, but the plants don't know whether there were buildings here 30 years ago or whether this was always seashore. We have sandy soil, lots and lots of sun, and although the soil is poor in nutrients, there's no competition for the sunlight from trees, so that we have a tremendous variety of plants growing here. It is now late October, it's chilly, it's windy, and one of the things I was looking for that's growing right under my feet is the basal rosette of common evening primrose. You can see the leaves coming from one point in the center of this plant. That's what a basal rosette is. First time I wrote an article about basal rosettes, the editor changed the spelling B-A-S-A-L to B-A-S-I-L, leaving the reader wondering where was the recipe for spaghetti sauce. Now, this is a biennial. It lives for 2 years. The first year it grows in a basal rosette formation. The second year it has a stalk that gets much taller. The same kind of leaves, reddish tipped with a white midrib in the middle, raggedy edge, sort of coarse and a little bit hairy. And inside these woody fruits are lots of tiny seeds. They sell an oil pressed from the seeds, and you do need industrial equipment to do this. You can't do that at home, which are full of prostaglandins, good for heart disease, menstrual problems, hormone imbalances, and the like. But the part of the plant that we're going to use is the basal rosette, which is right over here. In the sandy soil, it is very, very easy to remove these, and they are common enough that you're not doing any harm by collecting them. So here you can see the basal rosette with these long, narrow, toothed leaves, prominent, distinctive white midrib, and a whitish root. Both the root and the leaves are tinged with red. You use the root as a cooked vegetable in soups, stews, and sauces. It is mucilaginous, which means it absorbs water. It creates soups and stews that are silky, similar to okra. Very, very delicious with a nice biting, radishy flavor. And I'm going to collect my winter supply of primrose right now. Oh, one other thing about the common evening primrose.
Hang on a sec. How do we do it? I'll flip it back to you just like this, okay? So
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Well, let's go over to where the other primroses are. And you can here, go from one to the other.
Where are we? Going to... Come on.
When you find common evening primrose lined up like this is where you should come with your date. Then you can walk her or him down the primrose path.
Good. That'll look visually neat.
When you're shooting.
How far are those other ones? Can we walk over there within good taping time?
Probably.
So you might want to mention how if you find one good part of one plant, you might want to look around for another plant.
Yes.
Then we'll walk over and do that. And speak loudly because the wind's really picking up. Okay, hang on a sec. We'll wait till the wind dies down so we can get the shape of this flower. Just gonna take a second here. Okay, that's good. Like that. One. I'm gonna step back and pan up on you, and you can stand up. All right?
Okay.
Tilt this a little bit towards me.
This is...
Oh, let's try that again. Hit speak really loud, right?
Yeah. This is the wrinkled rose, Rosa rugosa. It's a wild rose from Europe that does really well in sandy fields like this near the seashore. And it has a wonderful fragrance. This is probably one of the last roses of the year. The bush is very thorny, which is why I'm wearing work gloves. You can see some really mean thorns in here. The leaves are feather compound, one leaf divided into segments like the tail feather of a bird with little segments. So this is one leaf, here is another leaf, and these leaves are alternate. They're not in pairs. Each one is single. This species has delicious fruit called the rose hip, which is the fruit of the rose. Usually you call fruit by the name of the plant, like an apple is the fruit of the apple tree. But since that name is already taken by the flower of the rose, which is called the rose, they give the fruit a different name, and it's called the rose hip. This bush does not seem to have a very good crop of rose hips. They look sort of unripe and undersized, but when you find a wild plant in one location, before you pick, you should look around and see if it's doing better in another location. And I see in the distance some beautiful red-colored rose hips, and I'm going to walk over to them and start collecting there. Look at these beautiful fruits. One of your best sources of vitamin C and bioflavonoids. These are the rose hips. These things are the sepals, which enclosed the petals of the flower when the flower was still a bud. And here are the remnants of the petals. And the fruit is actually the ovary that contains the seeds. So let's remove the sepals. And here you can see the seeds inside the fruit. And what you do is remove the seeds, which are bitter tasting. They are full of vitamin E, but it's not worth it. I'd rather take vitamin E capsules. And then the flesh of the fruit is absolutely delicious and sweet. Tastes a little bit like apricots. And you can cook it. When you cook it, it's pulpy like applesauce. It has pectin in it, the same substance that gives applesauce its thickness.
Great.
Okay. And from the boardwalk, so they can see the direction of the prevailing wind.
Let's see.
Okay, let me know when you're ready.
I'm just going to go like this, okay? Give you a cue.
Okay. check out the strange shape of this bush. It is sculpted by the wind. The prevailing wind is coming from the low end of the bush, off from the ocean, and it is killing the buds that produce new growth. So only those branches that are sheltered by other branches right next to them are able to produce new growth. That's why from the windward side, the bush is much shorter, and the further side, it's able to get gradually taller and taller, giving it that really weird shape like a crouching hippopotamus or something. And that is the same thing that pruners do when they try to shape bushes by cutting off buds in places where they don't want the bush to grow. The saltwater spray coming in off the ocean from the behind the low end of the bush is killing those buds that are preventing it from growing tall over there. Summer somewhere, I think, on the next. This looks like a substantial route.
Okay, survey says 5, 4, 3, 2. Let me get you looking up first. 5, 4, 3, 2, whenever you're ready.
Okay, what we have here is a very common wildflower called Queen Anne's lace, growing in an empty lot about a block away from the Atlantic Ocean in Rockaway, Queens. Let's take a look at this flower. Named after Queen Anne, who was famous for her lace, but once she missed and pricked her finger with her needle, and a drop of blood fell in the middle of her lace. That's important because poison hemlock, which has a similar flower, never has the purple flower in the center. Also, the stalk is slightly fuzzy. You can see one little bit of hair on the stalk. If you look at it really closely, poison hemlock does not have that stalk. Although you can take a bite out of the Queen Anne lace flowers, I don't consider them very tasty. The seeds, however, which you see over here, are tasty. I use them in salad dressings, soups, breads, and sauces, the same way you use caraway seeds. And a little of this goes a long way. Now, this is a biennial, lives 2 years. When it flowers and goes to seed, it will then die. That's the second year. The first year, you have leaves growing on the ground that look very similar to the carrot tops you buy in the store. And here is the carrot. It is a white root, a different strain or race from the commercial carrot. This one is a little bit small. Let's take a look at one I saw growing here and see if this is any larger. Sandy fields are the best places to pull up wild carrots. They're very easy to dig up. Now, this is a decent wild carrot. It's about the size of the baby carrots you get in the store, except it's white. It smells like carrot. Poison hemlock does not. Another one to look out for is fool's parsley, both of which can kill you. The leaf stalk of this carrot has hairs that may even show on the camera. And this is definitely not one to pick until you're a very experienced forager, because your first mistake can be your last. It's the hairs, the carrot odor, and that little purple blossom in the middle of the flower cluster that tell you that it's wild carrot and not poison hemlock or fool's parsley, but you might still get fooled. People do and have been killed by eating the poisonous plants. Now, the wild carrots are in season in early spring and in fall. After that, in the winter, you don't know where to dig because there aren't any leaves to show you. And the leaves, again, do look like the leaves of the carrots you buy in the store. They are somewhat edible. I consider them a little bit too tough. Best use for the leaves is to use them to cure baldness, especially if you're leading a tour for kids. And the carrots are more chewy than the commercial carrots, so that they hold together much better in carrot soups and carrot cakes. That's basically how I use them. You can put them in salads too. They take a lot more chewing than commercial carrots, and they are very, very good. They don't have the beta-carotene that commercial carrots have. Probably the only example where a wild plant is less nutritious than its commercial counterpart, at least for one nutrient. So early spring and fall in New York City, I collect these in October, November, and December, and then again in March and April. May, the roots get tough as wood. You can still collect them and cook them, but then they taste like cooked wood. So that is one other use of the wild carrot. Making a tea out of the seeds is supposed to help prevent implantation of the embryo. So people have used this as a morning after pill, and it's certainly not going to be guaranteed to prevent pregnancy, but it might reduce the risk of pregnancy taken after the fact. There's also a legend that carrot seed tea is supposed to act as an aphrodisiac. And a lady friend and I totally disproved that myth. We made 10 cups of carrot seed tea and only the first 6 worked.
Great. That's a great segment.
Okay. Carrots. Oh, yeah, I should add one more thing.
Okay, hang on, so I'm just gonna get a cutaway.
Yeah, this is what I want. The dead carrot seed heads, which serve as a marker so you know where to look for the young carrots in the spring, resembles an empty little bird's nest. But remember, go after the carrots in sandy fields. If there's lots of grass competing with a carrot root, the carrot will be very hard to dig up and very tiny. Let me know when you're rolling.
Okay. Just need to work the focus here.
Okay. This is pepper sedum. It's a tropical plant that is evergreen because it comes from the tropics. It doesn't have the ability to lose its leaves in the winter. So even though it's tropic, you find it all year around. Usually near concrete because it needs a very high temperature in the summer to be able to reproduce, and the concrete absorbing the sunlight creates enough heat for it to be able to do that. It tastes peppery, and you use it in very small amounts, sort of the way you'd use black or white pepper.
Let me get in real close on it now. One shot far away with the concrete. Okay, can you walk this way now? Because I'm gonna just shoot back like this. Yeah.